everyone, it's Alexandra with New Mexico Historic Sites. As you can see, I am wearing my mask right now in order to follow COVID-safe practices. My coworker Allie Jones is here with me as well. She's helping me film this, but she is also wearing a mask. She is standing 10 feet away. But today I would like to be able to talk to you about one of the most recognizable plants in the Chihuahuan Desert. So in order to do that, I'm going to go on ahead and take my mask off. Arguably one of the most recognizable plants of any desert environment is the cactus. Most times when we think of cactus, we think of the desert. And where I am today at Fort Selden Historic Site, we are in the Chihuahuan Desert. That is absolutely no exception. Did you know that there are more than 350 species of cactus in the Chihuahuan Desert alone? But today I would like to talk to you about just one group of cacti that you can find in the Chihuahuan Desert: the prickly pear. We identify a prickly pear based on its branches, these right here, its pads. We call the prickly pear pads, obviously, because of their shape. Other cacti branches are not shaped like flat pads. For example, a nearby cactus here on site is this cholla. Its branches are long and rounded like a typical branch would be. Before we talk about what makes a prickly pear important, we first have to talk about these, their spines. The spines of the prickly pear pad are actually unique compared to other species of cacti. And that's because along with the typical spines that you would see on most cactus plants, the prickly pear pads also have smaller hair-like and more translucent spines that are called glochids. These glochids are smaller, they're more transparent, and they're easier to remove from the cactus plant than your typical spine, and only can be found on prickly pear plants. They grow in clusters on the pad as well as on the fruit of the prickly pear plant. Now, the prickly pears have developed these spines and these glochids as a method of protection against predators who might want to eat them. This is because the prickly pears are a natural food source for animals in the Chihuahuan Desert, as well as a shelter for animals such as rabbits, iguanas, birds, and rodents. The fruit of the prickly pear plant can be peeled and eaten raw, or it can be juiced and added to different beverages. However, we want to wait until the fruit is ripe, and as you can see on the plant behind me, it's not quite ripe. But if you come on back at the end of August or early September, I will teach you how to make it as a delicious add-on to lemonade. The prickly pear plant doesn't just have important use as a food. Some of its other important uses actually have nothing to do with the plant itself. Check this out. On some prickly pears, we can see what looks a little like bird poop. Hiding underneath these hard shells is a bug called the cochineal. Cochineal is an insect which feeds almost entirely on the pads of some prickly pear cacti species. These insects are parasitic. They live and feed off the prickly pear. Without the plant, the insect will die. And because of that parasitic relationship, if a plant has too many cochineals living on it at one time, the plant itself could die. This is called an infestation. Male cochineals look like many other insects with legs and wings, but the females look different and are actually really important beyond their life on the prickly pear. Females don't have wings and legs and look more like a roly-poly mite. The females are also red. Female cochineals have become an important part of the human use of the prickly pear cactus. When they are picked off the plant, dried up and crushed, they become the main component in cochineal extract. You may never have heard of cochineal extract, but you probably have it at home. It is also called carmine or natural red 4. Yes, a dye. Today this dye is used in a lot of things, including food colorings and makeup. But this is not a new use for the insect. Native Americans here in the Southwest have used the cochineal long before the arrival of Europeans to make paints and to dye their clothes simply by mixing the crushed insects with water. The plant also has medicinal uses, which indigenous peoples have used for thousands of years as natural remedies. Both the fruit and the pad have been known to keep blood sugar stable, which can be really important if you have hypoglycemia or diabetes. By removing the plant's pad, different poultices and infusions can be made to cure a variety of injuries and illnesses. When the pads are cut open, the meat inside has an aloe-like substance, which can be used on cuts and burns, similar to how we would use a Neosporin or a Band-Aid. Or you can create an infusion by mixing different parts of the plants with water to treat everything from urinary tract infections to stomach aches and food poisoning. Both the fruit that is produced by the plant's flowers as well as its pads have been a staple component of Mexican cuisine. The pads of the prickly pear plant, traditionally referred to as Nopales, can be cooked and eaten. And today I would like to show you how to make Nopales. In its simplest form, Nopales can be picked right off the plant and eaten raw. However, before we do that, we must first remove the plant's spines and glochids from the pad. Glochids are much smaller than the thicker spines on cacti and can fall off the pad much easier. They have backwards facing barbs that make them difficult to remove if they stick to you. And because they are much smaller, sometimes it's not easy to tell whether you've been able to remove them at all. One of the simplest ways to prepare ready-to-eat Nopales is to burn the spines and glochids directly off the plant. Now, this is the traditional way that most indigenous people in the southwestern borderlands, as well as the Spanish, used to do this. And they would do this by sticking the plant's pad into a campfire or directly into a flame of some kind. Nopales are edible year-round. However, not all cactus plants are edible, so it's really important that you make sure that you are properly identifying a prickly pear before you go doing this activity. If you would rather avoid that uncertainty, you can go ahead and buy some from your local grocery store. Farmers cultivate spineless varieties of prickly pear cacti specifically for selling in grocery stores. But if you are picking from a wild prickly pear, the ideal branch is going to come from the top. These are the newer branches of the pad and have a brighter green color than the older branches. They aren't as tough and they'll be easier to work with. Let's start by making sure we have all the supplies we need for this activity. I have knives, a cutting board, some tongs, and a pair of gloves. Now, there is a level of risk that we take when we choose to pick and cook nopales straight off the plant. I am combating that risk today by wearing long sleeves, long pants, and gloves because if you recall, there are spines and glochids on this plant. So, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to decide which pad that I would like to choose, and I think I'm going to go with this one over here. All you have to do is simply twist and it'll pull right off the plant. Now that we've removed the pad from the rest of the plant, we have to remove the spines from the pad itself. One way to do this to make cleanup a little bit easier is to place the pad on a cutting board like I have here or onto a paper plate and put that paper plate or cutting board into a plastic grocery bag. That way, once you've removed everything, you can just take the plastic grocery bag and throw it directly in the trash. However, I want you to be able to see this process today, so I'm going to go on ahead and do it out in the open. For this process, you're going to need a small paring knife. A serrated knife is not going to work in this instance. So all we're going to do is take that knife and scrape away the spines and the glochids from the pad, as well as cut the edges off of the nopal. Once you've removed all of the spines and the glochids from the nopal, it's probably a good idea to go ahead and rinse off the pad in order to get any accumulating glochids off of the pad itself before you use it to cook. At this point, we just have to slice our nopal for it to be ready to eat. However, most nopales are cooked before they are eaten. I don't have the ability to cook anything right now where I'm at. However, we have provided a few links to some recipes and some great videos on how to do that on our website. Now, I will say the nopales do have an acquired taste. That taste is similar to a green bean, however, and you can add it to dishes like you would a green bean or even a green bell pepper. You can add it to dishes such as rice and beans or even a soup. We would love to see the recipes that you create with your nopales. There are so many more uses for the prickly pear than just the ones that we've discussed. This plant has remained an important agricultural product here in the borderland region. It not only helps to characterize the Chihuahuan Desert, but helps the people who live in it thrive. Thank you so much for joining me today as we explore some plants of the Chihuahuan Desert. Bye-bye.